Jesús Santrich is remembered for being one of several prominent commanders within the 2nd Marquetalia of the FARC EP, or known in English as the Second Front of the FARC People's Army. The FARC, or nowadays the FARC dissidents, are a faction of the former Colombian guerrilla army which demobilized and became a political party in 2016, but these dissidents did not agree with the peace process, so they simply continued with their guerrilla war against the Colombian state. Jesús Santrich was actually one of the delegates of the peace process between the different guerrilla factions and the Colombian government back in 2016. His status as a delegate in the peace process was heavily supported by Cuba, and Cuba was the main sponsor and orchestrator of the peace process. The relationship between the Venezuelan communist regime and the Colombian guerrillas goes back more than a decade. As early as 2007, Hugo Chavez is known to have been courting the FARC and the ELN before the peace process while the war was still going on, and his providing certain safe havens to them on the Venezuelan side of the border allowed those insurgencies to survive longer and prolong the civil war in Colombia now that these guerrilla armies had a safe staging area across the border where the Colombian armed forces could not follow them.
La FARC y el ELN no son ningunos cuerpos terroristas, son ejércitos, verdaderos ejércitos.
The peace process very quickly broke down. As I said, several factions of all the guerrilla armies did not agree with ending the war and they kept fighting. However, in the last several years, especially as the crisis in Venezuela has escalated, many of the FARC dissidents who had previously promised to demobilize have gone back to war. One of them is Colombian Congressman Jesús Santrich. Santrich is not actually the guy's real name either. His real name is Jesús Hernandez. He was the son of a Venezuelan philosophy teacher and a Colombian philosophy teacher, and he lived in both countries growing up. He was going to college in Colombia when in 1990, the student leader of the communist youth movement in Colombia, Jesús Santrich, was killed in a raid by the armed forces. Jesús Hernandez took on the name Jesús Santrich as a nom de guerre to honor his fallen friend, and that's been the name that he's primarily been known by for the last 3 decades. Accounts of the death of Santrich in Venezuela are heavily disputed. Some sources say that he was killed in the Venezuelan state of Zulia by a rival FARC faction. Other sources say that he was killed in the state of Apure by a rival faction, and other sources say that he was killed in Apure but by the Venezuelan Communist Armed Forces. If he's really dead, then this would be a major blessing to South America and the entire world. Jesús Santrich is a bad guy. My personal opinion is he always intended to go back to war from the very beginning, because the Colombian peace process was really just a way that the Cuban regime would be able to play both sides of the war. Because after that peace process, these guerrilla dissident factions, which Cuba had trained, and Cuba still maintains contact with these people, they were still fighting. But then on the other side, the FARC political party was now a part of the Colombian state, and Cuba heavily supported the FARC party with money and with great press. The Cubans figured that with a Marxist political party in the government and still having Marxist insurgencies fighting out in the jungle, they would be successful in pulling Colombia further towards socialism. Cuba has a strategy, and it works, and Jesús Santrich was part of their strategy.
Iván Márquez y Jesús Santrich son bienvenidos a Venezuela y al Foro de Sao Paulo cuando quieran venir. Son los 2 líderes de paz.
What he was doing in either Apure or Zulia when he was killed is unclear, because this time last year, the guerrilla commander Jesús Santrich was spotted and photographed in the Caracas neighborhood of 23 de Enero, which is controlled by Venezuelan Marxist civilian paramilitary groups called the Collectives. I'm not convinced that Santrich is dead, because only a couple of days before he was reported killed, Colombia authorized his extradition to the United States on charges of drug trafficking and terrorism. So it's highly suspect that just a couple of days later, Santrich is reported dead in Venezuelan territory and no body has been recovered. That's highly suspicious. It's certainly a possibility that he's dead, but until I see a body, I'm not going to be convinced. Thank you for watching Venezuela Explained. If you haven't already done so, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I'll be back soon to explain some more things about Venezuela that you're not going to hear in the news.